Travis Wayne Goodsell. So, at 11:30 today, I was hacked through YouTube. And I'm pretty sure they don't know how to hack YouTube, and thus it would have to be a Mormon YouTube employee. So what they do is they use YouTube when signed in as a weapon. They throttle me. They slow down processing. I try to click on a site and the red line starts to go across and it stops and it freezes and it takes forever to load the video. And will, on occasion, when I'm trying to watch a video, it'll buffer. And other times when I'm uploading a video, they'll reset the upload to purposely toy with me. Or during processing, they'll freeze it. And many other attempts through YouTube. But the more vicious and malicious criminal cyber terrorism of this Mormon YouTube employee is that he will attack my computer programs and cause them to be slow in functioning and to even not make them function so that I can't load them, upload them. And so I've had problems getting my music player to work or my movie maker to work. Today they pulled the stunt again of my Word program to get that to work. It's a non-stop problem, but they were hurting me while I was trying to look at an article about St. George's pro-Israel rally that they held this morning, in which there's no room for hate in St. George. And the YouTube Mormon employee began freezing my computer. And so when I brought it back up from a reset, Word wasn't working anymore. Volume also is another one they've tampered with. Yep. Trying to watch the new Stephen Colbert and I have no volume. And so that's why it was weird that last 2 days I have not been tampered with. Not on YouTube, not on the sites that I go to, not on my computer programs. Everything was running smoothly without problem. And then it didn't last after I did the video saying that I was wondering. And so yeah, 11:30 today, which I did the video in which there's the noon prayer special for Fridays by Islam, in which Muhammad declares a day of judgment to destroy the wicked. And it's unfortunate that there are Mormons who know the church is not just a fraud, but that Lucifer is their god. They know about the inverted pentagram, and they know the doctrines of Lucifer to take away agency, and they live their lives worshiping Lucifer, but in public and to Mormons at church, it's all about Jesus. They perpetuate the fraud that they emulate the prophets perpetuating on Mormons. These kinds of Mormons are the most vile and malicious criminals that there can be. They're the ones who spray paint inverted pentagrams. I saw that up in Alberta, Canada. Apparently there was some satanic Mormons, we'll call them, up there. As sides of buildings got spray painted with inverted pentagrams. If you don't know Alberta, the majority of the people, and I mean the majority of the people, and it's not very many people back when I was there in the early 90s. Not very many people. And so, yeah, when you have a small population, but you have 2 stakes, I think it was 2 stakes, because I think ours was a stake center too. Could have been, well, because the one brother was the stake president, and the other brother was the bishop of my ward that I was in. It's all a family thing. But being a foreigner, I was immediately put into a stake position as the facilities representative, simply because of the lack of activity in a small Mormon town outside of Salt Lake City and basically Utah. And so just going to church, you can get high positions. And so it's unfortunate that the other Mormons are choosing to believe the lie, but not believing that it's Lucifer. That they sincerely believe it's Jesus that runs the church. And they're illiterate in the sense that the brainwashing they've received, or indoctrination, if that makes you feel better, is incapable of understanding what they read from the scriptures. It goes right over their head, and it's just Jesus. And so Nelson, in his video for conference, when he says, "Thanks, Celestial," that's exactly what he was doing. He was reinforcing the brainwashing, indoctrination, upon those particular Mormons. The Luciferian Mormons, no, they already are hardcore. They just laugh and go, "Oh, those other stupid Mormons, I'm the chosen one because I know the sacred secret that it's Lucifer who runs this church." And they think that they can be loyal to the church by committing crimes against me and others like me, if there are any. And that the church leaders will promote them to the point where they too can be of high rank in the church. Because that's what they desire, is power and positions of authority over other people to take away agency, and thus be abusive. And so it's sad that when Mormons read 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 8, that whole sign in the heavens, it never occurs to them. And I know this because I was born and raised in the Covenant Mormon. I would read over it, and I would see the heavens open and God sitting upon his throne. I'm thinking this is an actual vision in the mind, like a dream. I'm not thinking in terms of star conjunction that gives a precise date. And when we go to the public school systems and we get taught about our solar system and the different planets and the sun and the moon, I don't think in terms of conjunctions attached to when the celestial bodies are in a specific conjunction for the year. It's not until I do other research, like watch R-rated movies, or even other movies, the movie Contact, can't remember her name, Jodie Foster, because there's another Contact with Amy Adams. It's not that Contact, but she's searching, listening for aliens. And they have a star chart of the direction that the microphone or the satellite antennas were pointing at. And so she'd put a pin that she's covered that area of space. And so I can understand that. And then when I watch Stargate and I hear Daniel Jackson explain how to identify a location in space to input it on the Stargate, I understand it. It's a three-dimensional location device where you have to have a square grid, a cubed grid rather, and so I can understand him when he says that. And so when I learn about solar eclipses that occur, and now after we have apps on our computers and programs originally, and then they decided to not produce programs for us, because apps, you can have hackers work through these third parties to attack our computers. But we can get a Stellarium program, as mine is called, in which I can see the heavens and be anywhere around the world at any time, either in the past, the present, or the future. I literally am a seer with this app. And so knowing this now, when I learned of the solar eclipse in 2017, I went right to my Stellarium and saw that it was right there at the star Regulus in Leo. And so I know from my education, which I became the foremost anthropologist of the ancient Middle East, because I was born and raised in the Covenant Mormon, I wanted to know answers, and the church didn't give them to me. And so I became the answer using science, not spiritual witness. And I then realized that it matched scriptures that were also talking about signs in the heavens. And so knowing 21st of August 2017 had to potentially do with the latter days, I then went to Revelation chapter 12 and see that it says, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun." Now, this isn't some mental thing where I'm seeing a woman who somehow is clothed with the sun and she's standing on the moon, and it's just some vision in my head that I'm seeing what John was seeing. He's telling us there's a sign in heaven. It literally means a sign in heaven. And I'm well aware that that means it can be a date, a specific date, depending on how many celestial bodies you incorporate in your sign in heaven. See, the sun shall be darkened, that's too vague. There's not enough to go on. It happens all the time. Moon turned to blood. Yeah, happens all the time. Stars fall from heaven. Yeah, every single year. At certain times of the year, there's the annual meteor showers that occur. And so there's no way to know anything of a day or an hour from just those vague generalities. But John is giving us something specific that we can use our Urim and Thummim to find this date. And then how to interpret it is another issue, because you have to know the ancient mindset of the author who wrote this. But it helps to have Joseph Smith and his works. because they explain this specifically. Look in the footnotes, 1a. Joseph Smith translation, Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 to 17. Parentheses, appendix. Note the changed sequence of verses in the Joseph Smith translation. End parentheses. And you'll see that verse 5 is moved to this sign in verses 1 and 2. Now go to your Book of Mormon. Ta-da! There it is. The Book of Mormon also confirms that verse 5 needs to be moved to this sign. It's the birth sign. And so, knowing that all the celestial bodies are involved here in 3 constellations, this is a one and only one time event in the history of the earth. This will never happen before. This will never happen in the future. This only happens once because of our position on earth as we look in the heavens to see this sign. And this was 2,000 years ago when this was written. And it comes from the Egyptians. And for that, we go a lot further back than 4000 BCE. There have been scientists who've been lying to us, who are in the field making money in their comfortable living, perpetuating the lies because they are not using science. But regardless, the average reader should be able to recognize this is an actual sign in the heavens that would give a date. But unfortunately, because of Christianity, Christians don't see it. And because Mormons are claiming to be Christian, they don't see it. And so Mormons don't see that the Book of Mormon comes from this. Plus, the church doesn't footnote it for you. It's purposely so that you don't recognize it. But if you read your Book of Mormon, you get to Nephi's vision of the Tree of Life and his expansion on it, where he talks about John, who will write a book about the latter days. That's supposed to be your clue. But with Jesus goggles, it's all hidden from you. Now, this is a blatant, obvious star date, and it's 23rd September 2017. The same year as the first solar eclipse. That's how I was able to find it. Because I went to my Urim and Thummim, went to the date of the solar eclipse, and then went forward. And I only had to go a month, and there it was. But I didn't realize verse 5 needed to be a part of it. So when I first was doing videos on it, even the most popular video on this channel, still to this day, after all these years, I only show the verses 1 and 2. I don't show verse 5. But the videos I've been doing lately, whenever I show you that picture screenshot, you will see that I include verse 5 now. If you'd been following me all this time, you would have known when I finally made the discovery that verse 5 needed to be included in verses 1 and 2. Because that was the last holdout. Because once I found 1 and 2, I kept going on into the future. And what do you know? Verse 3, that's a sign in the heavens too. That occurred on the 17th of December, 2017, the 5th dark day of Hanukkah. Learning of the Jews. And then kept going. Couldn't figure out the tail drew the third part of the stars from heaven until Monson died. Because it was soon after, January 2nd. And then I checked and went, oh, there it is. The quadranted meteor showers, the third largest falling stars of the year. And so, that's how I knew who Nelson is. Because I knew how the authors interpreted the celestial bodies. And so, Mars was at the top of the scales of judgment the night Monson died. That's according to Brigham Young's changes to the administration succession, means that Nelson is now the judge of Mormons. And so, struggling to figure out verse 5, I eventually figured it out as I checked the footnotes finally. And then went back to verses 1 and 2 snapshot on my Urim and Thummim and went, oh, it was there the whole time. But sure enough, I confirmed that the Joseph Smith translation, and then found it in the Book of Mormon, was correct. And so yes, the first year of the reign of King Zedekiah, king of Judah, is not 597 BCE. Nor 600. It's 2017. You see how the learning of the Jews was incorporated in the Book of Mormon now. This is a direct, blatant example of prophecy in the learning of the Jews. But there's a trickier one that only I knew because of my education, being the foremost anthropologist of the ancient Middle East, because nobody else had the answers, and so I needed to utilize the scientific processes to get the answers, and thus became the only one who knows how to do this. And so we go to Samson in the book of Judges for the funnest example. And so in chapter 14 of Judges, Samson, and because I'm the foremost anthropologist of the ancient Middle East, because I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, again using the scientific process, not a spiritual witness, I knew that Samson means Sun King. The N is a suffix determinative, meaning king for persons, kingdom for places. And as the Sun King, I knew the ancient method of understanding of solar eclipses, that it means a death of a king or kingdom. It's a sacrifice. And so, what is the first death in the stories of Samson? Verse 6. He rent the young lion that roared against him as he would have rent a kid. He had nothing in his hand. It was bare hands. But that can take you beyond the mark. So what you are seeing here is the Sun King with a death, thus a solar eclipse, of a lion. The lion constellation is Leo. The king star is Regulus. And so it's telling you that there will be a solar eclipse, right, by Regulus in Leo. Solar eclipses are fun because when you see a solar eclipse in text as a story form, you've got more detail than just the general sun shall be darkened, and more than a regular constellation or conjunction that happens fairly frequently. Because a solar eclipse in Leo at the star Regulus is rare. And so you can use your Urim and Thummim and keep going until you find the sun by Regulus as an eclipse. And you'll get a precise day and hour. Are we sure no man knows the day and the hour of his coming? Oops. Now we can understand that whoever put that in Matthew was not the original author, because Matthew gives us stories of the days and hours of the events in the latter days. It's not just one, it's multiple. And so, thus, linguistic science, we identify this person as not following the linguistic pattern of the original author. Thus, we call him a redactor, who copies from another papyrus scroll and adds his own or makes corrections or changes. This is one of the additions he threw in, similar to the author of Paul, where he says women should keep silent in church. That was a redactor. That was not the original author of Paul. Notice I said the author of. None of these characters are literal history in the learning of the Jews. That's Constantine who did that change. And so, 21st of August 2017, I was able to get a cheat sheet on that. Because when I found out that, but I had first, before I figured this one out, I figured out Abraham sacrificing Isaac was a star date. And it's even more curious because Abraham takes his son Isaac to Utah, top of the mountain, and is going to sacrifice him. That's a solar eclipse. And a messenger appears. That's Mercury, the messenger of the gods, and says, don't go through with it. We're going to sacrifice a ram now. As he was going up the mountain, he's talking about a lamb. They're the same. They're interchangeable. So the lamb is the constellation of Aries. So now I had to look for a Ram-Lamb constellation of Aries with a solar eclipse and Mercury. And 8 April 4 CE. And I didn't find it by going to the text. But that's how you can do it. How I found it was trying to see if the church's claim is correct versus the Book of Mormon's claim versus Christians' claim versus other people's claims about the birth of Jesus during the Roman period. That's what you all should have been doing to confirm rather than a spiritual witness for which you have nothing but a feeling. And so I did it. Because if it's true, I'll find it. If it's not true, I won't find it. So I went and looked. I went 10 BC, 10 AD, looking for a sign. Not knowing what I might find, but found it. 8 April, 4 CE. And it was the solar eclipse in Aries with Mercury. And because of my knowledge, I knew exactly the scripture that came from. I went, whoa, wow. That's cool. And so over time, I began to realize that Joseph Smith Sr., the author, of the rewritten 116 pages, because it's the learning of the Jews. It's not literal history. Didn't come from actual gold plates. That's symbolic coding for us. And so I was able to figure out the 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem. That's the correct date that we're supposed to be looking for. Because as you keep going in Revelation, you get to chapter 19. And you see a sign in the heavens. The sun on the back of the white horse, which is Pisces, and an angel standing in the sun. That's a solar eclipse. In Pisces, on the back of the white horse. And already knowing the start of the latter days, I just kept going forward. Found it! 8 April 2024. 20 years later. Senior was giving us the date for the Exodus, when the Mormon, who would be our Christ, would sue the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and creeping death would occur that same year. And the waters would be parted and the dry land at the Green River exit on the 70 for Mormons to pass through on dry ground to go back to Zion, which it took me a while until I found the Joseph Smith Papers, 19 July 1840, and went, oh, it's not Missouri. It's Southern Illinois. Hey, wait a minute. That's where X marks the spot of the first and the last day of darkness over the United States of America. Solar eclipses not only give us the day and the hour, they give us the location on Earth, And they give us the identity of the name of the Mormon who would be our Christ. Sun god at noonday, Amen of the Egyptians, Amen El, Emmanuel. Crossroads of the sun god. So yeah, then I would go on to find that Nelson also has a baby name meaning of red star, Mars. So not only had it already confirmed that Mars is Nelson and was able to follow his actions since then, and was able to then confirm that yes, sure enough, I was testing, because back in February of 2017 there was a partial solar eclipse with flooding, which there's flooding in chapter 12. And he was giving the Family Discovery Day talk with his wife here in Salt Lake. And sure enough, there was Mars and Venus in the constellation of Pisces to confirm he was Mars before he even became the president of the church. And so when he talked to the youth, I saw him. I knew exactly where he was, and I knew in advance what he'd be talking about. And sure enough, he talked about it. And Mormons were upset with me because they don't believe. The Mormon Youth Hitler Battalion, Nazi Battalion. It's before the goat beast, Capricorn. Lucifer, inverted pentagram, goat beast, inverted pentagram. Right there in his mouth. And so yeah, I'm well aware of what's going on. I'm well aware of the abortion sign in the heavens that we just had, with Mars being aborted. And so yes, even though I have not heard any bombs go off, I have not seen anything in the news yet, the mere fact that Hamas attacked Israel on the final day of Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, Feast of Ingathering, Gathering of the House of Israel, the separation of the wheat from the tares, Judgment Day, I am well aware that this is fulfilling it. And so apparently they're still trying to delay it. But there's a Mormon who's upset with me on YouTube, trying to keep it silent. And so, yes, I knew about tomorrow's solar eclipse in advance, because it's also right here in Judges. Sun King. Who's the next death? Verse 6 of chapter 15. And the Philistines came up. Philistines are the great and abominable church. And burnt Samson's first wife and her father with fire. Fire was not included with the lion. Fire is included here. What type of solar eclipse is tomorrow? An annular eclipse. The ring of fire. Where an angel stands in the sun. Samson's wife and her father burned. So where would it be? Which constellation? Be Virgo. The bride of Samson, the virgin, Virgo. Sure enough, there it is. As Nelson gets aborted. And so, yes, that's why I'm thinking it's Friday the 13th. Knights Templar all the way here. Joseph Smith, Knights Templar. What did you think the gold plates were about? What did you think the Holy Grail in verse 40 was all about? The human Jewish Christ, whom Joseph Smith says will be a Mormon in the Great and Abominable Church, to save Mormons from the Great and Abominable Church if they only listen to him. And Mormons won't listen. They're either Lucifer worshippers deceiving everybody into believing they believe in Jesus, or Mormons who are illiterate and brainwashed into believing it's Jesus and Christianity and that Joseph was and the Book of Mormon is, despite saying that it's the learning of the Jews. You know, Amanda was just laughable when she was seriously asking. She had no clue that she was an anti-Semite. She had no clue that she's illiterate. And I have yet to hear back from her. I wasn't being mean to her in my comment. But she was humiliated because of the simplicity of it all, that the church had deceived her. These are the other Mormons. And so, yes, the third one is here too. 8 April 2024. Samson takes down the Great and Abominable Church. Great and Abominable Church is the solar eclipse on the back of the white horse. Samson is the Lamb. He's Jupiter in the Ram-Lamb constellation. Because Revelation chapter 19 also talks about Emmanuel as the Lamb. Now you understand why he talked about the Lamb. Why the Book of Mormon talks about the Lamb. Why Joseph Smith in section 58 of the Doctrine and Covenants talks about the Lamb, the wedding supper feast. Right there in Samson. But all of this is literal history to Christians, and thus to Mormons. You don't see star dates. You don't see that this is the latter days. And as a result, you have no clue that your Christ is going to marry a woman of the Great and Abominable Church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as Samson himself is a Danite. And will get married at the Philistine temple. Room number 13, by the way. His first marriage was on the Friday the 13th. How do I know this? Because the Salt Lake Temple has a lot of weddings, and there are many of those weddings who have their wedding supper feast at the Lion House, where they have carcasses of animals. I'm not sure if they have lion. I don't recall that, but they do have great honey. Beehive for honey. Not just for Utah's symbol, but also honey. Also, Beehive House. Those were not the original names of those buildings. They named them after. I don't know if they knew this. Just like I don't know if that anti-Mormon who rushed to Congress to get this area named Utah instead of Deseret knew that it was the top of the mountains, that it was fulfilling prophecy in the scriptures. There are some things that, the enemy knows and are purposely fulfilling scriptures to be the bad guys. But then there's some other stuff that I go, there's no way they would have known this. His name actually means Lucifer? His name actually means he who is from the crossroads of the sun god. That are the first and last letters of the Paleo-Hebrew script. Thus the first and the last, the author and finisher, Alpha and Omega, that's Greek. So you got to transliterate it into Paleo-Hebrew, and it's the last letter of the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet. Right over America, the shadows, written by the finger of God. All of these are prophecies, guys. All of these that I've told you have happened. And the tomorrows will be the completion of what has yet to happen, because it's prophesied to be tomorrow. And it's so frustrating for me to try to get this through to Mormons. Because back in 2017, 2016, when I figured out some of this stuff, trying to teach it to Mormons didn't believe. You know, the #1 video, sure, I got a lot of people watching. Not a single one of them understood it. And then YouTube took over by orders of the church, and I've been silenced. So, yeah, there's lots of memories as I read over the scriptures. And it's difficult for Mormons to believe that a human being could actually be the fulfillment of Jewish prophetic scripture, because they think that the prophecy of Jesus that replaced the Jewish prophecies is the more accurate thing that they're waiting for, when it erases all of this from your minds. Mormons literally believe in Jesus and get offended if you say that you could be a Christ. I had a person today call me a narcissist. He's using a beam and emote. He's the narcissist. Why is he even bothering? If I'm some crazy kook, why did he have to go out of his way to make a hate comment that should have gotten him banned? But YouTube, I can't trust them to deal with these kinds of people, because they didn't flag them. Whenever you claim that somebody has mental problems, you're being abusive, even if you're a psychologist. But yeah, I'm well aware there are other people who have ruined it for the actual guy. I saw that when I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. I had no idea about Mark Hoffman using forged documents to fool the prophets. And so the prophets were on this, there is no such thing as translation, Joseph Smith was a revelator. I had no clue. I had just found out through science that Joseph Smith is a translator of Hebrew and Egyptian. So I came to the church. Hey guys, Joseph Smith is true. Church is true. Yay! What do you mean you're going to indefinitely lock me up, hide me from society, and try to erase me by torturing me and trying to murder me, and having ordered and paid to have it done? fulfillment of prophecy, though, too. That's the sad reality. Is that those Mormons who know this church is the Church of Lucifer, but call it Jesus, are emulating the prophets, who likewise know this is the Church of Lucifer, but call it Jesus, and deceive Mormons into turning Jesus into an authoritarian Lord Master who whips Mormons, forces them to pay tithing so that priestcraft can be employed, putting Mormons into bondage and sex slavery and other criminal activities for protecting the church, with blood oath covenant loyalties with the death penalty. And the naive Mormons don't see it. And another person who obviously is too young to remember the old temple texts, because they don't see it in this church. They don't know what I'm talking about. What they see seems perfectly fine. They have no clue that they still got the knife. So, alrighty. Guess we'll check the church news. If there's something, I'll do that video first if it's a shorter video.